YouTube. My name is Elizabeth. Welcome or welcome back to my channel, Book as in Books, and welcome to the 6th installment in my Ultimate Jane Austen ranking series. In this video, I'm going to rank the books according to the characters that I called the married meddlers. Who are these characters? I had a bit of difficulty defining that category because they definitely exist. They definitely are an important element of Jane Austen's novels and they could not really be set aside. But I had difficulty defining it precisely. I would say these are people who are married, so they are not part of the quartet of main character, heroine, love interest, bad boy, and rival. So they are not part of that quartet. They are not looking for a wife or for a husband. They are off the marriage market, but they take an interest in our heroines' lives. For some reason, they have a role to play in the lives of our heroines. And sometimes it's a positive influence, but sometimes it's a negative influence. And sometimes they think they are positive, but they end up being negative. Or sometimes they think they are negative and they end up being positive. So basically, they are meddlers. They mind not their own business. They mind our heroine's business. And I think that makes them a very interesting character. Some of them have a very small presence, and some of them have a very big presence. So it's hard to evaluate that category. At first, I thought I would separate it. I separate the mean meddlers from the kind meddlers. But then not every book has both of these types of meddlers. So I decided just to fuse these characters in one single category. So just the meddlers, the married meddlers, the characters who have an influence on our heroines' lives, but who are not, that they're equal in the marriage game. They are older, or they are out of the game, or something like that. So let's rank that. So I will rank it simply subjectively from the characters that I like the most. Well, I'll start with the least. I start at the bottom to the characters that I like the most. So the meddlers. In Northanger Abbey, I found just one meddler, and it is Mr. Tilney himself. It is the father of Henry Tilney. So this is the first, Northanger Abbey is the first of Jane Austen's novels, and I think her formula was not quite established yet, because I'm going to call it a formula, that there are some typecast characters that appear in every book. And in this one, there is not this wonderful and delicious type of characters that Jane Austen has been really good at creating in further books, and there is not really a married meddler. So Catherine Morland leaves her home and accompanies Mrs. Allen to Bath. And Mrs. Allen is a very nice character, but she does not meddle. She's just there, and she's a bit stupid, and she doesn't really do anything. So the only one that actually meddles in it is Mr. Tilney, the father of Henry Tilney, because at first he thinks that Catherine Morland is rich. He's very happy that his son has managed to catch such a prize. But then he learns that Catherine Morland is not, that she's just the daughter of a clergyman, I think. And basically she's a little nothing. So he decides to just throw her out of the house in the middle, well, not in the middle of the night, but almost, and just send her alone to travel, I don't know how many miles, but basically he behaves like an idiot, and really he stands in the way of Catherine's happiness. However, the reason why I put him at the bottom is that his character was a bit over the top. He's not that interesting to read about, and also because he's totally legitimate in his intervention. Not in the way he intervenes, but he actually has he has a reason to intervene, because we're talking about his son. So the fact that he is legitimate is in his intervention makes him less interesting. So I put him at number 6. At number 5, we have Emma. Now, once again, it's a novel that doesn't quite follow the exact formula of Jane Austen, so it's difficult to find meddlers, because Emma is not meddled with. It's not somebody with whom you really, truly, easily meddle with. So the only meddlers that I can think of are Mrs. Weston, who is very kind and very gentle, and she would be a positive influence on Emma, except that she doesn't really have any influence on Emma. And the other one is Mrs. Elton. Now, Mrs. Elton, we barely see her. She's there only in a few scenes, and I consider her a meddler because she decides to take Jane Fairfax under her wing, because she is taking Emma's place at the ball, because she becomes the most important woman in in the village, I guess, for a little while just after she gets married. Of course, it's not going to remain like that for a very long time, but when she arrives, she thinks of herself as just the most wonderful person, and she decides that she will intervene in the village of Highbury, and that she will meddle in other people's affair. And she's a very delicious character. I really like the character of Mrs. Elton, but we don't really see her a lot, so that means that she ends up at number 5. At number 4, Mrs. Norris from Mansfield Park. So of all the meddlers in Jane Austen's books, she is the one with the most screen time, I'm going to call it that. She is present in so many scenes, and she has managed to take control almost of Mansfield Park, because she has managed to convince Sir Thomas that she is a very good manager, that she is a very rational thinker, that she has sound judgment, that she makes right decisions, when in fact she's almost as silly as her sister, and the only difference is that she doesn't really know it, and that she has more energy to put in action her bad decisions. So she's a very interesting character. She has a lot of screen time, but the reason I don't really like her that much is that she's mean. She's really, really mean to Fanny Price. She doesn't really have any other role in the book except to be very, very mean to Fanny Price every time she has any occasion. So I'm not always enjoying seeing Mrs. Norris on the page. Sometimes she makes me laugh, but it's quite rare, I have to admit. Most of the time, I just feel compassion for Fanny Price, and I just find her mean. So she's a very important meddler, but I don't like to read about her that much. So she's at number 4. At number 3, Persuasion. So we have 2 married meddlers in Persuasion. We have an evil one, I guess, and a good one, except that the evil one doesn't really do anything. The bad one would be Mrs. Clay. She is a widow. She is the daughter of the, I'm going to use a modern term, financial advisor of Sir Walter Elliot. And her main role, I guess, is to show how little Anne is valued in her own family. And the good meddler is Lady Russell. Now, Lady Russell is the one who advised Anne to turn down Captain Wentworth when he first proposed. And of course, she is absolutely well-meaning, because the Elliots, Sir Walter Elliot and Elizabeth Elliot, they are just so completely stupid that Anne cannot rely on their opinion, and she cannot count on them as family members. But Lady Russell is really kind and really well-meaning, and given that she has a rank that is somewhat equal to that of Sir Walter accepts her opinions and her advice. So she is absolutely well-meaning, and even at some point, Anne says that even had she known that now that she knows that she got, I should make this more clear. At the end of the book, once Anne Elliot is engaged truly and for real to Captain Wentworth, she tells him that even knowing what she knows now, she would still have followed Lady Russell's advice earlier. She still would have turned him down, because at the time she thought that following Lady Russell's advice was the thing to do. So it shows that even a good intentioned meddler can have a lot of negative consequences. So I put Persuasion at number 3 for its meddlers. At number 2, a novel with a lot, well, not a lot of meddlers, but meddlers who play a very big role. It is Insensibility. And the 2 married meddlers would be mainly Fanny Dashwood and Mrs. Jennings. So Fanny Dashwood is the wife of Eleanor and Marianne's half-brother. And it's because of her that Mr. Dashwood, I already forgot his name, that the brother completely goes back on the promise he made to his father on his deathbed. He had promised he would take care of his sisters, and Fanny Dashwood manages to manipulate her husband into thinking that he really doesn't owe them anything. They have a small pension, they don't have any real needs, they don't really need money, because Fanny Dashwood is greedy. And then once Eleanor and Marianne and their mother and their little sister arrive in the countryside, they are taken by not in their home, but Mrs. Jennings, who live in the great estate next door, whose daughter is married to Sir John Middleton. She decides to take the Dashwood sisters under her wing and take them to London. Now, of course, Mrs. Jennings is a wonderful character, just warm and expressive and doesn't know when to shut up. And just a wonderful character who means very well, but once again is not necessarily the most tactful person and is not necessarily the person you want to confide your secrets to. But she has a lot of influence on the lives of Marianne and Eleanor, and also it shows the contrast between her generosity in taking the girls to her home in London and Fanny Dashwood's selfishness in refusing to take her sisters-in-laws for the season. So yeah, these are two wonderful meddlers. They contrast a lot, one completely generous and the other one completely selfish, and they both have a lot of influence on the plot. So that would be at number 2. And at number 1, my absolute total favorite meddler, it is Lady Catherine de Bourgh from Pride and Prejudice. Now, Lady Catherine does not appear that much. First we learn of her by name because she is the patron of, is it the patron? I forgot the name, the word, but basically she is the one who gave Mr. Collins his vicarage, his parsonage, his place where he can work. So basically she's the employer of Mr. Collins, though technically I think it's the Church of England who's the employer. But anyway, basically she gave Mr. Collins his job and he's very grateful for it. And we learn of Lady Catherine through Mr. Collins. So of course we don't get a picture that is the most accurate perhaps, or the smartest picture, but then we do get to meet Lady Catherine at Rosings. And then the most wonderful scene in all of Jane Austen's novels, my favorite scene in all of Jane Austen's novels, is when Lady Catherine decides to visit Elizabeth Bennet at Longbourn to extract the promise that she will not marry Mr. Darcy. And that is just for that scene, that book is at number 1 for the meddlers. Now, of course, Lady Catherine is completely unsuccessful because she's not entitled to get that promise from Elizabeth, and she's not even entitled to exact that promise from Mr. Darcy. She is owed nothing by either Elizabeth or Mr. Darcy. So she is just completely living in her own world. She is just convinced of her self-importance. She doesn't really realize that she's making herself ridiculous with all that pride and all that snobbery and all of that. And she's my favorite. I love Lady Catherine. I love to hate her. Not that I hate her, I love her, but you know what I mean. It's just, she steals every scene that she's in. That's another one that steals every scene. So, yeah, I don't think Lady Catherine and Caroline Bingley ever meet. That could have been super interesting. That would have been so much fun. But anyway, Lady Catherine, my favorite meddler. There are a few other married meddlers in Pride and Prejudice, I guess. We could consider that Mrs. Gardiner is a positive meddler when she writes the letter explaining to Elizabeth what Mr. Darcy did for Lydia, I should say. I suppose we could consider her a meddler. Mrs. Bennet is definitely a meddler when she decides to send Jane on horseback to Netherfield so that it will rain and she's going to get sick and she will have to stay the night. Is Charlotte Lucas a meddler once she's married? I don't think she is. But anyway, there are many characters, secondary characters like that, who have a lot of influence on the fate of our heroine. But the main one is Lady Catherine, and she's just wonderful. So that is the number 1, my favorite meddler. So let me know in the comments what you think. What is your ranking? And do you agree with my choices? And did I forget a meddler? Is there a meddler that is more important than the ones that I mentioned? And yeah, that's it. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine!